Howdy friends, and welcome to the Microdose. My name is Kevin, I'm your host for today. I wanted to talk to you guys about the political compass, which is a useful tool that we use in online discussions. I'm sure you're familiar with it yourself. You might have seen it in online forums, and it's a way that we nerds identify ourselves to each other. On this compass, left to right defines one's economic principles, your typical conservative versus liberal, but the up to down, the y-axis defines somebody's faith in governance, how much authority one would grant to the government. And so this is a way that we can sort of declare where we stand and easily identify ourselves to others online. The ability to differentiate between all these different beliefs has led to a lot of subsects within the larger group that would all call themselves anarchists. I'm certain you're familiar with a few of those as well. There's agorists, anarcho-capitalists, anprims, ancoms, and trans, anarcho-transhumanists, mutualists, egoists, anarcho-individualists, and femmes, anarcho-pacifists, queer anarchists. That's all the anarchists I can think of, but the point to be made here is that there's a million of these, and each of them has their own logo or color combination, as it were. Very different, and most of these folks would say they have nothing in common, but I would argue that they do indeed. Every one of the philosophies I just painstakingly mentioned falls below that center line. Each of them is anti-authoritarian in their own way. I'd even go so far as to argue that the most notorious enemies, ANCAPs and ANCOMs, have so much common ground, it's almost silly to be fighting. I know I'm going to get a lot of shit for it, and I'm ready. Down here in the comments, bring it. Go ahead and tell me how wrong I am. But I have something to back up my claims here. Listen, hear me out. These notorious rivals, with whom we're all familiar, they're both anti-authoritarian, as I mentioned before. Both of them are skeptical of any man having authority over another. Both of them wish to abolish the state to some capacity, whether you're a minarchist or an anarchist. ANCOMs, ANCAPs, everybody wants to see the government erode to some extent. Both seek freedom and liberation for common people. They have different methods to get there, but ANCAPs and ANCOMs would both tell you how they want to free common folks and see them live prosperous, happy lives. Both are anti-war. Both oppose foreign military interventionism. Both oppose the war on drugs. Both concern themselves deeply with philosophy and are, in most respects, compassionate and care for other people. I know you're going to pull up examples on both sides of folks who don't fit those ideals, but I'd argue I have friends on both sides of the spectrum, good friends, logical, reasonable people who just came to some different economic conclusions. But for all these differences, let's be real, they're small, they're petty. Differences of economics should not be cause for complete dismissal of a potential ally. Realistically, in a free society, individualists and collectivists, we can coexist. You know, there's no need for the rivalry. And while we're on the topic of caps and comms, I'd like to mention a philosopher. My friend actually suggested I read Mikhail Bakunin. I'm probably not pronouncing that well, but he was a collectivist anarchist, yet a strong critic of Karl Marx. And Bakunin thoroughly rejected Marx's notion of dictatorship of the proletariat. He did not believe in a one-party system of rule. And so he, in some sense, was far more individualist than the Marxists that we commonly think of. And I'm sure some of my friends on the left are they're gonna beat me up for getting this wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm accurate in my interpretation of Bakunin. In fact, I've got a nice quote from him. "We are convinced that liberty without socialism is privilege and injustice, and that socialism without liberty is slavery and brutality." And that's a direct quote from Federalism, Socialism, and Anti-Theologism in 1867. So, I mean, this alone, if you listen to this guy, when he talks about his distrust of authority, his distrust of even Marx's revolution was too violent and too authoritarian for him. So I think that a lot of my ANCAP friends, if they read Bakunin, would probably realize, hey, like, these ANCOMs aren't so far away from us in the end. So here we have two very distinct groups who share a lot of common ground when you get right down to it. But you wouldn't know if you ever saw them interact online. They hate each other. They spit venom, dismiss each other as authoritarians, as not real anarchists. They consider themselves mortal enemies. Imagine what we could accomplish with a coalition that bridged the economic divide, a gathering of anti-authoritarians of all stripes. Who knows what we could accomplish if we acted on those common interests? It is my humble opinion that anyone who rejects the initiation of force should be considered an ally in our fight against the state. Whether you have crazy economic principles, you want to be a cyborg, or you want to live in the mountains, as long as you oppose uh, government force, as long as you oppose militarism, you're a friend of mine. We can disagree about economics, we can disagree about how much government there should be, as long as you share those basic principles, the non-aggression principle, as long as you oppose violence, you're an ally of mine. And we're wasting time, in my opinion. We're wasting a great deal of time trying to differentiate and trying to argue and create enemies where we could be creating friends. I say we stand to gain a lot by uniting and focusing on the real problem. And so, from now on, in my own discourse, I'm going to consider that the line of solidarity. Okay? Anybody who clocks in underneath the XY intercept on the bottom tier of that compass, I'm going to consider them a friend, and I'm at very least going to try to understand their beliefs before I dismiss them. But regardless of where somebody falls on the political compass, regardless of what colors they use or how they identify online, just I hope you'll hear them out. Okay, I hope we should be able to disagree and maintain civilized discourse. That's the hope here. And we shouldn't be against working with people with whom we disagree. You'll find good ideas in the strangest places, believe me, and each different philosophy has something interesting to contribute. That's just my 2 cents, and honestly, who am I? So go ahead, tell me what you think. Tell me how wrong I am. I'm sure I've pissed off plenty of people on both sides with my conciliatory attitude, but I hope before you get in here and tell me what an asshole I am, you seriously consider what I'm saying. That there's a lot to be gained from forgiving a few disagreements here and there and focusing on the things that we all believe in. That's all I got to say for today. This has been the Microdose, and I'll see you soon.